So what we have here is farm saw work. This is getting to be so grown in I can't get the excavator through here because I need to. So I need to do some thinning. And that's exactly the kind of work that the farm saw concept is for. So here's the thing, a couple of little points I want to make. You might hear the echo in the developing Hilltop saw shop container. I think first, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is not to parallel process too much. You know, take things to completion, or at least as far as you can, and then set them down. Because I get spread out so much, next thing you know, I've got 5 projects in play and none of them get done. But today I can complete a couple. And got some parts in the mail. I did show you the big holes former bar for that monster. Now, I'm in a little bit of a dilemma because this is going to add a lot of weight and size, being a 36-inch bar, you know, 3/8 versus 404. This is the 404 up here. You know, I've got a 3/8 bar on that, 28 inches, and it's actually something I can use. So the very second I go up there, the question for me is, am I actually going to be able to use this thing once I put that monster on there, that big bar? So I'm not sure I'm going to answer that question today, because while I still have work noodling, I kind of like the configuration it's in right now. But and that saw has been a surprise. It's been very, you know, trouble-free to this point in time, and a lot of fun. A lot more fun than I expected. I thought the weight was going to really play a bigger factor. And I mean, it does. It's not that's all I'm going to go to work with, but for fooling around on the wood pile, it's a lot of fun, and it's fine. I got the side plate for that one. And this is for that little blue Husqvarna G366, I think it is. And this is for my Husqvarna 285. I need to find a circlip to put in there. This is for the 630. I was going to pop a couple of seals in that thing. And I think it's got an air leak. Okay. So like I'm saying, you start hearing the number of projects to begin to pile up. And then I've got what I call PITA projects. And this is for that big Dolmar or Makita. And I tore apart a muffler. This is one I had bought online. And I took a torch and heated it up and peeled it back and opened it up. And it's going to require a fair amount of work. Because when it came apart, it kind of sprung. So I noticed that when I was putting things together, the dimensions are a little bit different. So I'm going to have to do some work with that. And see the distance between those and that. I'm going to have to shim those up because that doesn't make up the difference. Stuff like that, just stupid stuff. And a lot of braze time, braze it back together. And I don't know how aggressive. I may just open up that area right there and leave it and not put a pipe on it. I got this carburetor. This is one that's for ostensibly a 371 or 372 original edition. And I'm going to blend that to that same Dolmar. So, I mean, that's the stuff that I've got on the bench. And one of the comments I wanted to make, and I make this video probably for this alone, is, you know, saws in the out years. When they're brand new and you need dealer support and stuff like that, you have a mentality based on the fact that they have a warranty, right? But dealers go away, brands, you know, go away at times, like the Makita did, Dolmar did. And you still may have to support the saw, you know, in the future. And steel and Husqvarna are, I think, sort of the gold standard. Although I have to tell you that some of the old steels are really tough to get ignitions and stuff for. You know, the old horizontal layouts. You know, we're a Husky all the way back into the, oh my God, the 70s. You can still get parts for them. So it kind of proves a point. It's one of those action speaks louder than words things where that particular brand, because of the way they were, the way they used parts across different models, have proven over time to be a little bit easier to maintain than some of the other brands. And that's kind of a point. And I guess I'm reacting to a video I saw. It was actually a good video where a guy was doing analysis between, you know, 572 and one of the off brands. It might be, I'm not going to say which one, but could be Echo, Dolmar, Shindaiwa. You pick it. And one of the points that was made was carburation versus, you know, the Autotunes. And I think one of the misconceptions that's still pretty rampant out there is about the Autotunes. A new carburetor in the box needs to be flashed, and that is absolutely correct. But once that carburetor has been on a running saw where it's been flashed and now falls into the used part category, it's already been flashed. What you're looking at in front of you are kind of case in point of the fact that you can mix and match. If they're flashed, they'll work on pretty much any ignition of that era. you know, and you can clean them like a carb. They're a carburetor. I think we did a video, Bob and I think I did a more recent one where taking the solenoid off and cleaning it's really not a big deal. And I have found to this point in time that the electronics in those saws have been pretty reliable. Yeah, I mean, statistically, anything is going to fail. But to this point in time, I found them pretty reliable. And these saws right here, again, are case in point. There isn't a saw on this table, no matter what it looks like, that isn't built out of, you know, some really core old parts, especially with the carburetor ignitions. All of them came off 572s that are getting to the end of their service life. And yeah, I've got a new cover on one and new bearings and stuff like that, but the ignition and carburetors on these all by now would be considered old on any metric in terms of how many cycles they've run, because these were logger saws. I guess all of them were. This came from a batch of 4 that a guy had blown them all up and pretty much got rid of them. They were all pretty high hour saws at the time too. And I've got 2 more from the junk piles. One I built from a couple of saws I got from a couple of kids who were getting into these things, and they gave up, and I gave them way too much money, but I wanted to support their habit and their hobby. So I bought them, and the first junk pile build I did, I still run that thing for felon. It's a great saw. But the point is that the things that are hard for me to come up with are not ignitions and not carburetors that are flashed. That's not a problem. And I have not had a failure either. The kind of stuff that gets tougher to find used any good are things like covers, but that's on any saw. Tank handles, I bought a couple of new old stock ones, so I have them around. You know, mufflers used, forget about it. They don't exist. You got to buy them new. But they're still out there is the point. The parts are available. So the point is that the aversion to these Autotune saws based on the longevity and the interchangeability of the parts is a bit of a myth. It's really not the case. And yeah, I wish Husky would sell them flashed new out of the box. That's a marketing decision. That's not a technology-based decision. It's based on a marketing thing. There isn't an ignition system or carburetor or anything in between on these saws. It came from the same saw or came from the saw that it's sitting on originally. They're all mixed and matched from a random collection of parts. So that's proof of that pudding is my point. And the longevity of these things, I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. But at this point in time, you know, I guess what it is I think of these things in the same class as the CDIs from the 70s and 80s. And when they fail, you know, you're not going to replace them with a set of points from a prior technology. And in the same spirit, you're not going to change these carburetors with a carburetor from the prior technology. But just like the CDIs from the 70s into the 80s through the 90s, the things that make them die will be the same things that make these things die. And they'll have the same kind of a lifespan. How's that for a summary? They're going to certainly outlive my desire to run a chainsaw. So the Autotune in of itself, point being, is not a reason not to get into used saws and fix them up. That's not a reason at all. And it's also not a reason not to buy a saw based on the mythology that somehow you can't repair them. You know, that's a bunch of crap. So the reason why you don't want to take a saw like this into the future is nothing to do with stuff like that. It simply has to do with whether or not you happen to like them, the price performance works or doesn't work. It's things like that should make the decision, not whether or not it's an Autotune. That's really not a point. I think these are some of the best bang for buck saws you can get, especially used. One of the beauties of having an aggressive brand like Steel and almost a cult-like following is I get these for cheap. We all benefit in sort of a twisted way, but I find it amusing. So anyway, in that spirit, let me see if I can take one of these and bring it to completion, and maybe we go cut a little bit of wood with it and kind of prove the point. Get the other thing on the other side that I know is missing. Gotta tighten the chain anyway. And that's this shield. I think now that I remember, that was the last piece of the puzzle for this saw. This is a spare. I'm sure it's going to be warm. There we go. Not like it's going to go anywhere, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Got that. Put the bar and chain back on, I guess. We can go run this thing a little bit. I'm going to leave the buck and spikes off of this right now. I'm just going to use it for firewood. That's going to be this job. Long bar, firewood, more firewood, maybe a little bit of noodling from time to time, but it's not going to be a felon saw or anything like that. Partly because of that. That's a lot of slop. So we have a completed junk pile saw, and that will be used for general farm work and firewood. And I don't know, I may upgrade its parts over time. And that's the beauty, is I get more junk piles and more bits and pieces. I'm going to helo coil that back to the right size at some point. But other than that, this thing will run. It'll cut wood, right? So there's the dilemma right there. I just finished getting that 28 3/8 that I blended to that saw, right? It worked right on there pretty good. And that's got the 063 groove. So you can see down in there. In Husqvarna sells loops like that, so it works for me. Or this one, which is 36 inches instead of 28. In 404, so we're adding another pound. But I don't know, it might make it more useful. I don't know. I'm torn, because I know that works for me pretty good. You know, for like noodling and stuff like that. It's light. It's actually light enough that I can carry it around and do something with it. I don't know. Adding another pound, I don't know if I can bring myself to do that right now. You know, I've been having fun with that saw. You know, I love that Husqvarna for the working man. Let me tell you what, you carry that thing around, you are a worked man, not just a working man. So, well, I've got this perfect test log right here, and it's mostly solid, I think. So what I think I'll do today, and it'll be my little task, is to take that junk pile 572 with the 28-inch bar and Husqvarna chain, block it, and then take the little axe I just put together and split it. And that should be good enough. It's pretty warm out in the deer flies are pretty brutal. So anyway, not sure best place to put the camera. It's a fairly steep hillside right here. You can get an idea of the orientation by the tree relative to the ground angle. So I think I'm going to put the camera up high and just look down on things. Do like this maybe. Right? Gotta make sure this doesn't tip over, so I've got to adjust the legs to take into account the hillside. Those are the two axes I actually just finished doing. I need a peavy. And let me get some bar oil and gas in the chainsaw. let's see if it restarts. You know, that's really the kind of a test for me. So that was with high idle. Let's see if it restarts with no idle or nothing. Just go. So there you go. That's a good running saw. Now I did a tune on it. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but I did a slot in one of the one of the log sections there for about 30 seconds, and you could hear it clean out, so it needed that tune. That's about all you got to do to an Autotune, is let it do that. You know, so supposedly around 3 minutes idle on these old ones, about 40 seconds of full throttle in a loaded cut, and it'll reset its base settings. So when the next time you fire it up, it'll be a different setting. So, I mean, no matter how the base setting is, it'll still fire off and run. But, and it'll still try to tune itself. You know, even if it's off, it'll still try to tune itself. It's just what that field tune does is it doesn't change where it gets to while it's cutting. It just changes the start point. That's about all. So anyway, this is actually nice looking ash. It's not timber quality because you can see that dark stain. It's solid. It's not started to rot, but when it has that those black or that stain on the inside, that's a bacteria that grows, and it's no longer something that I can sell as a saw log. You start splitting. Yeah, this is the stuff you like to split. Now this axe I've had for a little while. I don't know, I did it a little while back. So I want to see how it works as compared to the one I just finished doing. Move this down the hill a little bit. You'll probably see for yourself which one splits better. Now I have to say, this one here I did not put an edge on, as dull as can be. Where this one I actually had put an edge on it. But I don't think its profile is as good. This one here is a full 4 pounds. This one's not quite. I don't know how heavy it is, but it's not 4. Yeah, there you go. Now you may remember, but I had put this one together and ran it against my 4.5 pounder, and I was really disappointed in this axe as compared to the 4.5 pounder. So here I've got a 3.5, a little more than 3.5, and sure enough, I'm a little disappointed in that as compared to the full 4 pounder. So in the truest sense of the word, size matters. Well, one thing I do want to say is on that Husqvarna chain, it did not stretch in this application here. This is on the 572, and if you remember, the same bar and chain would stretch terribly on the Makita, and I have no idea what the difference is. Not a clue. And yeah, I did rock it. I got it to the shale up there, but was able to finish. And from what I can tell, it's just something a file can fix. So I'll put it up in the vise and sharpen it up, and we'll be out with the same bar chain combo yet again.